All right. We have Valli Gideons on the podcast today for Raising Deaf Kids. Hi, Valli. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast today.
Thank you. Congratulations.
Thank you. Yes, this is so exciting. I think a lot of parents are excited about this. There's just not much in this space
There is not. So
for parents
awesome.
of kids with hearing loss or like special needs as well. So I'm really excited to be able to provide that for parents. And thank you so much for coming on. I know parents are going to love hearing from you. So just to start out, in case for some reason someone hasn't heard of you, although I can't imagine, but if they haven't, can we just start with briefly like telling about your story with your kids and hearing loss?
Oh goodness. This question always gets me because
I know.
briefly, my kids are now 17 and 18. My baby just turned 17. So they're junior, senior in high school. So when people ask me to tell the story of like kind of our introduction to hearing loss, now it's going back 18
Yeah.
years.
Do you
So,
remember it? Yeah. Yeah.
oh, well, I wrote a
I
book
know.
about it, so I'll never
Yes.
forget. But it is amazing how time does start to create a little bit of amnesia because it
Yeah.
seems like a lifetime ago now. My baby is 6'1", 225. So
Oh,
yeah, well, he's not my baby. My baby's my daughter. But anywho,
yeah.
so um, just our introduction to hearing loss in a nutshell, if I can sum it up,
Mhm.
was no family history, nothing in utero that would have prepared us. And when my son was born, he failed, and I'm air quoting, the infant screening. So we went back for the more extensive test, the ABR, 2 weeks later. And we had been told it's probably just fluid, which has kind of become like a little bit of a hashtag on different social media platforms. It's not just fluid, because this seems to be a
Yes.
common thread for many, many parents. So when we went in and had that test, and then we're taken into the cold room I always talk about. There's a whole chapter in my book about it, but so I won't go into all the details, but I know a lot of people relate to this room you're taken into and basically told in one breath that our child had severe to profound hearing loss. And that's what kind of started us on this path of trying to get educated real quick. And then 21
Yeah.
months later, my daughter was also born with the same syndrome, and we're 100% with kids having hearing loss.
Hmm.
So
Yeah. Yes. Same. I mean, same story. I have three. So my little 2-year-old, she's two right now, does have regular hearing, but my two boys were born first and they are 7 and 5. So we're still in the little stages in our house. They were same thing, both born with hearing loss. And yeah, and I think you spoke perfectly to back when I can remember how impersonal it is to when the audiologist tells you, like, your kid has hearing loss. And for us, I mean, it's your first baby. There's no hearing loss in our family. And it ended up being after we had our second son, we found out that they have hearing loss due to a rare genetic syndrome, which has also caused some other challenges that no one in our family has ever had. Um, and this is like your first baby. So it's like you're a first time mom, first time parent. You're like doing these hearing screenings that you never were like prepared to have to do. And then, I'm sitting in my room with, the audiology room for the, bigger test for like 4 hours or something, or 2 hours, like trying to get to the baby to sleep so that they can like do the hearing test. I'm like falling asleep holding the baby because I have a 2-month-old baby and I'm a new mom,
yeah,
new to ever having kids. And then at the end of it, my husband are like both sleep deprived. We're both being in there, and they're on top of all of that. They're like, oh, yeah, your kid has hearing loss. And then they start giving you like all the that they can have cochlear implants. Do you know what cochlear? I had never heard of cochlear implants before I had children that needed them. So it was just, it's like the medical team is 10 steps ahead of you.
yeah.
You know what I mean?
We actually
Um,
weren't given the
it was
information
hard.
from our audiologist.
Okay.
She once she got the results, she then took us into the room where we call him Dr. Lab Coat because I don't remember anything else about him except I'm assuming he was an ENT, and he was the one that came into the room and said, like literally in one breath, just like you said, your son has severe to profound hearing loss. He'll probably get hearing aids, maybe be a candidate for cochlear implant, maybe go to mainstream high school. Any questions?
Yeah.
And we were like, what? I mean, I have a whole chapter in my book. It's called The Fog. And it sounds like it must be a chapter that almost every parent who's experienced this could like relate to.
Absolutely.
Like, what? I'm holding my 2 week old. What parents of 2 week olds are thinking about high school? Like,
Yeah.
yeah. But needless to say, we did leave that clinic and we found a team of people who were a lot more empathetic and supportive than that. It was so clear to this person that this was so something that
Mhm.
he did so regularly that he forgot or was numb to the fact that the people on the receiving end of this may be in shock,
Right.
which is what we were because we were not expecting it. And I do know because I have connections with lots of audiologists and people in the field now that they are working really hard on sensitivity training and better ways
Yeah.
to present this information and you know not spinning it and trying to be just rah because that's not exactly what you want in that moment either, but to also be
Right.
encouraging and understanding that this is going to be hard to digest.
Hmm.
So it it's a lot for any parent of a newborn. Being told
Yeah.
anything out of the ordinary is a lot. So
Yeah.
that's what I really love to speak to new parents and just, I always, the first thing is just to take a deep breath. Like, it's going to be okay, but yeah, for a while, it's going to be, a lot to digest. You're going to feel a lot of feelings, and that is okay. You're not supposed to leave that appointment rah, let's go. Like, that's too soon. You might need a minute. So
Yeah.
I
Yeah. I
think,
got onto the phone that night with my mom, and I was like sobbing to her. It's like, you can't hear what I mean. Yeah, it's a
yeah,
lot. And that is something that I also love to talk to parents. And maybe we can talk a little bit about the fact that there is like an acceptance and a grieving process.
yeah, big,
And I think a lot of parents, so I'd love to know what you have to say. Is I think a lot of parents are afraid to go through that grieving process because they're afraid that if they're upset that their kid had hearing loss, that means that they're not being a good parent, or that means they're not like fully accepting their
yeah,
child, which I of course disagree with. Since you have been through that process, I would love to know from your side, was there a grieving process? Was there an acceptance process? What did that look like? And what would you tell like a new parent who like just found this out?
yeah. I definitely, again, my book Through the Fog, I keep mentioning it, but
Mhm.
there's a whole chapter on that part too.
Oh,
And
fantastic. People should
basically,
get it. Yeah.
what I want, reason for sharing it was to say, I wish I had allowed myself to experience and share those feelings more. And it's kind of like an ode to people to like, don't do what I did and try to just carry it, share it. There's other people who feel exactly the same way or who can relate that to the grief. And the grief is just for things not being how you expected them to be, and that this wouldn't be the parenting experience you expected it to be, or the your child is now going to have something that is not what you had expected or planned for, and which you start to learn
Mhm.
that's true in parenting. And no matter what, it's never going to be what you thought it was going to be. But when something is out of the ordinary like this, you're grieving the motherhood you thought you were going to have, and in the beginning with all the appointments, and the baby getting hearing aids at 3 months old, Some are even getting it younger than that now, I think. But, just simply putting hearing aids on a baby is such a stressor. And
Mm.
all the appointments. And I had my husband is in the Marine Corps. Well, he now just retired, but so he was not around a lot to. It was all me mostly. So doing it mostly alone as a new mother, like you just described, you're so tired. You have all the other, my friends that were new parents as well were worrying about, a sniffle or a sucking or whether to use a burpee or not, or bumpers in the crib or not. And, you know, I'm sitting here thinking I'm wiring my child's brain to learn to develop speech and language starting at 3 months old with these little hearing devices. So um, that's not the answer to the question. But the long story short
Yeah.
is the quicker you allow yourself to just go through those feelings and share them with someone. You can't go around it. You have to go through it. And it does not make you a bad parent. That's what I think we're worried about. And as military spouses,
Mhm.
particularly, we're just expected to suck it up so much. You knew what you were getting into. Um, you know,
But
I,
did you really know what you were getting?
well, it's hilarious when people say that. It's like,
Do
really?
do you
I was
really
never
like
married.
know until you experience it?
Yeah, that was a question. That's a whole different podcast, but being a military
Yeah.
spouse, and it's like, do other spouses get told that?
Mhm.
That you knew what you were getting into. What do you mean? It's
Yeah.
it's just a lack of empathy and understanding. And so I think for the people around you, most people mean well. I really do believe that. I've decided to believe that, but they don't know what to say.
Yes.
And we had some family members, I think now looking back in retrospect, they had a hard time accepting it.
Mhm.
So they would say things that minimized it because they couldn't accept what was
Yeah.
happening. So you know, in just know that people are going to flub up and say and do things that may sometimes be hurtful, but communicating and being vulnerable and sharing how you feel, I think, is going to end up being a win in the long run, and not to carry it alone.
Yeah.
For now.
Yeah, no, that's really important. I mean, to that point, I have recently talked to parents who said, they sought out therapy at the beginning to make sure that they were going through the grieving process and, to have someone help them go through that so that they could show up the best that they could for their kid. And I also went through therapy, but just like last year. So it was like 6 years in because I did kind of that too. I just kind of like muscled through, which is also my personality. Just and there's so much going on because my children also, like, we had to have like physical therapy for them. We had to have like occupational therapy at different times. At different times now my kids like still get that. And so it's like parents who have typical kids aren't, having to like do physical therapy every week and have those goals and speech therapy goals and all of the goals. And, I think I just got into, mindset of just like doing the next thing because there are so many things to do. And then you're talking about now I have to keep the hearing aids on, which, spoiler alert, I didn't. I was really bad. I know, but I am also pretty bad at like dissenting from medical advice a lot of times. My husband, who is a nurse practitioner, gets upset with me, but I couldn't keep them on. The cochlear implants, once we got those, because we knew that cochlear implants were the next step for my kids' hearing loss, and we knew that the hearing aids were mostly just for insurance purposes and probably weren't really going to help them. And it was like impossible to keep this on like a baby who's like rolling around. And then I had this, like you said, the second child who had it. And so just when we think they are 2 years apart, 2.5 years apart. So just when we thought, we're like getting used to the implants, we're past the surgery, we're getting into a groove with like therapy and stuff, we had another one. and it's like the process all over again. For me, the second one was easier because I already knew what to do and I already expected it. So I just, and we were already connected. So I was just like, okay, the second one, he's got this, we need this, this, this. And he got everything faster because we knew what to do. But for my husband, was actually harder to accept the second one because he felt like that we had just like gone through this, and now he's like, now we have to like start over with the process again and put like another kid through surgery. And I'm interested to know what was, what was your perspective when you know, had your first one with the hearing loss and then you had a second one with hearing loss. How did you feel? Which side were you on? Were you on Elaine's side where it's like, yeah, we've done this before, we can do this again? Or Elaine's husband who's like, oh, we've got to do this again?
I think I was both.
Mhm.
So we found out because of the syndrome that they have, we knew there'd be a 25% chance of a sibling also having the syndrome. Pendred syndrome is what my kids have.
Okay. Yep.
So we were just going to wait and find out when she was born because we had that belief, you know, we can handle it. We know what to expect. And so we kind of were cavalier about like, we'll just wait. And then literally the week my son was, we were prepping for cochlear implant surgery on our baby, firstborn. We found out the quad screening came back for my daughter that she had a high probability for Down syndrome.
Okay.
So then I'm, you know, pregnant, preparing for a surgery with the baby. And I said, you know what, we need to find out. We need to find out what we're dealing with here. I just need to know so I can wrap my mind around. So we did the amnio, which then came back
Mhm.
that she did not have Down syndrome. And then they could do that genetic testing to find out the other. So that it took about 6 weeks or maybe. So, you know, by then we'd gone through a surgery and we're dealing with, you know, all the stuff you deal with a new cochlear implant with our baby. And then we got the call. I got the call. And it's so ironic because I was driving back from auditory verbal therapy with my toddler. Well, yeah, I guess 14 months. He was maybe 15 months at this time. I guess that's a toddler. Yeah.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
got the call from the geneticist. And so when I heard she wanted me to come in for an appointment, and I said, just tell me. I pulled over and I said, just tell me. And then she told me, and I don't really remember what came after, but I was shocked at the overwhelming sense of grief I felt.
Mm.
I was, I thought I was prepared. And, you know, again, we were, I
Yeah.
think, cavalier about it because we thought, you know, and that's what everybody told us. Well, at least you know what to do.
Yeah.
And which was true. So there were, but well, I was thankful in the long run that we had that amnio to find out. So I was prepared. I got to experience all those feelings. So by the time she was born, I was ready. You know, I didn't have to go through birth and then have a newborn and then go through the testing and finding out. So
Mhm.
um, we had
Yeah.
all the connections. So yeah, having a great audiologist and, you know, having all the team in place definitely, and like knowing the language and knowing what it all meant definitely helped. But it also was, we knew what it all meant and it was hard.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
knew how hard it was because I'd already just gone through it all.
Yeah.
So it was both. And now I can say, for all the people who have siblings, as having a 18 and 17-year-old, I mean, this realization came probably when they were in elementary school. I would not change it. Like the connection these kids have, I mean, they're close in age, so
Mhm.
that's partly it, and they're military kids, so maybe that's partly it, but they literally have their own language
Mm.
with each other. They have someone in their family, in their home that completely gets it. And as much as
Mhm.
I try, and as much as my husband tries, and our extended family tries, we will never truly understand. You know, we are not
Yeah.
deaf and hard of hearing. So they have someone who completely gets it. And, we always say if we had had the third like you, maybe that would have been the poor hearing child, you know. And had I not been in such a fog and been married to someone in the military who deployed so much,
Mhm.
I probably would have had that third. I come from a family of three kids.
Mhm.
There's just something special about the three kids. But yeah, I was kind of done at that point. It was back to back. Um, but yeah, we always joke that that kid was probably going to be the poor hearing child.
Yeah.
Something
Yeah,
else you
I'm
said, I wanted to loop
mhm,
back on not
definitely.
being able to keep the hearing aids on. Um, for this is probably one of the biggest things, not one of the biggest, but it's up there with the questions I get is how do you keep them on? And
Yes.
people beating parents beating themselves up over it. And all I
Agreed.
can say is you just have to do the best you can. You try to just be consistent, take time, allow timeouts, allow, breaks. But just, for our son, at least the theory was, you wanted to keep the aids on as long as you could to just keep that nerve stimulated. Because again,
Yeah.
his hearing was severe to profound. So hearing aids would not have really been probably long term done much for him.
Yeah.
But it was just a mindset of just trying to be consistent. And so I know
Yeah.
that the all waking hours is still out there. And I know from a medical point of view, it is important the more the kids receive access to that sound, the better the outcome. So you know that. However, you cannot beat yourself up over it's a really challenging thing to try to do. And
Mhm.
I don't want one parent to feel that they failed if they cannot keep hearing aids on a baby all waking hours. And there's
Yes.
a whole lot of other philosophies about autonomy and this and that and the other. But when you have a baby, we're not discussing things like they have their choices over their whether to wear their devices or not when
Mhm.
they're literally 9 months old. We're
Right.
not quite in that phase of life.
Yeah, right.
So I
Yeah,
think the all waking hours is something, and I understand why it's a goal. And I do understand why it's
right.
important to, um, make it clear that it is very important. But
Mhm.
the flip side is we are humans, and these babies are humans. They're not robots. So you
Right.
just do the best you can.
Yeah.
Period.
Yeah.
Period.
No, that is helpful. And I think us moms, it's like we always take, and maybe you know why we do this. I know why we do this. Everything that like doesn't work out, we think that we're failing. You know what
Mhm.
I mean? Like, and I did hear, a parent who was trying to keep their implants on their child, was like young and moving their head around, and she was like, "I feel like I'm failing because I can't keep them on." And I answered back, I was like, "You're not failing. It's hard," because her child was like less than one or like one, right at one. I was like, "It is hard," but like now my boy is at like 7 and 5. Keep them on now, and now they ask for them to be on because they want to hear. But now after school they do take them off. They do need a break, especially my 5-year-old. He has a small cochlear nerve, and so he is still hard of hearing. He still does not hear everything even with his cochlears. So he also does sign language, which we are continuing to learn at home. And so hearing for him is like even extra hard, right? Is even more work. So he spends, a good couple of hours after school, after hearing all day, with them off, and I'm okay with it. Um, and that like that's what he needs to have a break. But I think what you said is so important is like we're not failing because we can't like keep this on a baby. We're not failing because we're not like cutting the sandwiches into shapes. Like, I mean, it's like we're always comparing ourselves to other people as moms and saying like we're failing because we're not doing this, we're failing, we're not doing that. And just like you said, we're regular people and we're raising regular people,
Yeah.
and you're not responsible for every single thing all the time. And so that I think that is definitely a really important thing because I also hear that so much from parents. And I And I agree. It's definitely a good goal. I think, depending on who like your audiologist is, sometimes audiologists and speech therapists like go by the data that they see collected on the computer and they're like, oh, you're not, wearing this so much. And it's like there's a lot of pressure coming from the medical professionals of like keep them on, keep them on, keep them on. Of course, I just tell them I'm doing the best that I can,
Yeah.
and I just leave it at that. So I would love to know, when you're talking about, other family members when your kids first had the hearing loss for like minimizing, I've heard that a lot from people who say like, we're fine. But then like other people start getting involved, or people when we're out, like make comments about stuff, or, family members will, tell us things like maybe it'll get better or yeah, comments like that that are not helpful and that are also not true. So
Yeah.
how did you talk to them? Because I know also I try to be graceful with those people because I also have an awareness that like these people are learning about hearing loss for the first time too, and depending on who. Now I will say like I live in like a pretty progressive area in North Carolina, and so every time someone has come up to me, they've just been interested in like what the cochlear implants do, and they think the technology is amazing, and I've always had like positive interactions with people, but I know that that's not necessarily the case everywhere else. But I try to remember that I have had like time to process and like learn about hearing loss, and I live with kids with hearing loss, and that other people who are saying these things like they're still learning and they haven't had like that time that I've had. But when you're hearing it a lot from people, is also like this may be like the fifth person that has come up to me in the week. And so trying to have space for someone and say like someone is learning, to being like, okay, I'm a parent, I'm trying to wrangle like these three kids ages 7, 5, and 2 and like the grocery store, and they're all yelling and you're like asking me about their implants. And then so it's like it's not the time, you know what I mean? And you're like the fifth person who's asked me this like in the month, and I'm like tired of talking about it. So how would you tell parents, because I know this is a question that comes up a lot with parents about how to navigate things that other people say and things that other extended family members say.
Yeah, I can't listening to you, I can't recall having people come up and say things that were off-putting or questioning, or I don't really
Yeah.
remember that as our experience. Um, that happening
Yeah, so
very
far everyone has been
yeah.
positive for me. I have heard some parents get questioned on like from people who are regular hearing. This is just like anecdotal, like what I've heard from other parents. I don't know where in the country they're from, but people coming up like trying to shame them because they're not using like sign language with their
Oh
kids.
yeah. No, I feel very fortunate that we have not experienced that. Um, so I think one thing is unique compared to having kids now. We didn't have social media.
Mhm.
There were not platforms of people on TikTok and Facebook and Instagram
Right.
showing their experience. Now there's so many accounts with, young kids. Um, and so I think um, that made it a bit unique where I couldn't have someone comment on our choices because there was nowhere for them to comment. Um,
Mhm.
in the on the internet, we were
Right.
pretty committed early on to be um, confident in our decisions based on the information we had. We were always willing to pivot
Mhm.
and not stay, um, married to kind of the path we were on. But things have changed a lot in my son's life. How the understanding about access to language has changed. being bilingual and introducing sign language has changed. So if we had to do it over again, would it be different? Absolutely. I'm sure it would be, because there's just so much more information, and which is exciting. So hey, if you're having kids now with hearing loss, be excited. There's so
Mhm.
much more information and
Mhm.
access to taking online sign language courses and online speech
Yes.
therapy and all the things you can do that, I mean, we just didn't have it. To join even I have my own Facebook support group I have for parents. It's, if you go to my
Yeah.
profile on Facebook, then I also have a group, and there's
Mhm.
lots of them out there that are just for encouraging and support. And to be able to just to say, I'm struggling with this, or what do you think about that, or anyone, there was no pilot caps, there were no Etsy stores, just all the things that
Yeah.
people have access to.
Mhm.
I think is just so amazing. And then also the flip side is that over information, I think,
Yes.
be too much, over access to too many opinions and too much information. You can over research something. So I would caution people to, you want to get smart on things, but you also don't want to over inundate yourself with the opinions of everybody. Um,
Mhm.
for us, our kids' outcomes have been, I couldn't have hoped for better outcomes. In fact, our son is got 5, 6, 7, 8, 11 college offers to play football at high academic school. Like, my
Yay,
husband,
that's so fun. That's so great. That's
and
amazing.
it really is. And I mean, we look at each other and we're like, we can't forget this. That,
Mhm.
we were worried, would he develop speech and language? And now he is in AP Chinese 4, and has, going into senior year, already has his college offers. It's like, how did this happen? So it worked for us. Every kid is different though. So I think that's
Mhm.
just, the comparison is the killer of joy. You
Yeah.
really have to just know each kid is so unique, and each family so unique. Um, so you can't, what worked for you isn't going to work for me, and vice versa. Like, just be open to, like, really giving your kid what they need, and tune out the noise. um and all this to say, I don't really have anyone come at me for the choices we've made.
Yeah.
I
That's good.
won't, I don't, I really won't let that in. Like, my page, all my platforms, I don't allow shaming and judgment. I love to hear other people's experiences and stories, and you can share also your opinion and thoughts, but you can't come at anyone in that space
Mm.
to say what they've done is bad, wrong. um
Right.
so I don't get a lot of it, thank goodness. I just have created, I feel like, as Courtney Kardashian would say, I've carefully curated, but my daughter always makes fun of her. Um,
Yeah.
we, like, it has been very intentional, the tone, and so I think that's carried on into our life. Um, that we've never had anyone really question, and probably because the kids have thrived.
Mhm.
Had they not, we would have had to pivot for sure. Um, so family members, the probably the only thing that was the most hurtful in the beginning with some extended family was just to minimize by saying, "Oh, he'll be fine. He'll be fine. He'll be fine. He'll be fine." And it
Yeah.
was like minimizing that, yes, he will be fine. I know he will be fine no matter what. But this is hard.
Mhm.
What we're in right now is hard. So just to say he'll be fine because you say it's not, does not make it true. And I think that was what I felt not validated or seen or heard. It really wasn't about the baby, because he was fine.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I wished I had been more um, able to just say, You know what? You keep saying he's going to be fine. And I just want to tell you that's hurtful. I know
That's
he will
great.
be fine. We know he will be fine, but there is so much work that has to be done to ensure he will be fine that you're minimizing that he's not growing out of this, you
Yeah.
know, what whatever. He's not going to mature out of this. Um, and then the flip side is all we're talking about, you and I are talking about right now, the grief, the acceptance, the
Hmm.
hearing aids, the cochlear implants, whether to sign, not sign, you know, there's that beautiful quote, all kids need is love and language and they will succeed. And there's all different ways to do that. Is we've never once thought our kids were broken and needed to be
Hmm.
fixed. And so sometimes you'll hear pushback with people saying, you know, that using hearing technology is somehow saying that we think our kids are broken. I can tell you 100%. I thought
Yes.
they were whole from the day they were growing in my belly. I did not think, no matter what, they're perfectly imperfect
Hmm.
humans. And I still believe that. And I would not change. I would not change who they are. It's just part of them. It's not who they are. It's just a part of them.
Yeah.
And as your kids get
Yeah.
older, you'll see that more and more. You'll start to realize that, I mean, there's still lots of challenges. There are. There's still challenges associated with it. Um, but those are just challenges. They're designed exactly how they were supposed to be.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I 100% agree. And, even I tell parents to not maybe not judge is not the right word, but use your own child's data. So don't compare your child to like, what this child is doing. This child is, speaking, your child isn't yet. It's about where your child is and then taking them to the next level of where they are. Because just in our household with my two boys, who have hearing loss, they have the same type of hearing loss, the same syndrome that caused this hearing loss. And my 7-year-old hears very well, and he uses spoken speech and like doesn't know sign language at all, but he prefers to speak. And my 5-year-old has a small cochlear nerve, can't hear well, and he signs and doesn't really communicate by speech. So even in my house, I have two different communication modes, and we're trying to all do sign language, and my 7-year-old is doing it more. But once again, I am not, I believe it will develop. I'm not pushing. I'm just, modeling like this is how we talk. And my 2-year-old, I'm modeling for her. This is like how we talk to our brother. So all kids are different. And even in my house, I have two kids with cochlear implants that communicate and do stuff like completely in different ways. And I can't even compare them to each other,
Yeah.
right? Because they're on different planes. So I always tell parents, and what you said is really valuable. Like, go by your child's data. That's the only thing that you can go by, and just help them get to the next step of where they are now. And don't worry about what any other kids, a person's kid is doing, and they'll all get there, which is hard for us, which is why I so value talking to parents like you who have older kids, because I'm still in the little stage. And we're still trying to figure out communication. They still, my kids still don't talk on grade level yet, but I mean, they have great resources at school, and they're doing great and they're improving. But we're still in it, right? We're not at the end. We're still like right in the middle and at the beginning. And so it's really encouraging to me to hear from, parents who have kids who are teenagers or preteens, and like, yeah, it does get better. Yeah, they get, involved in other things, and to hear that this isn't their whole identity, which we've never felt that about our children either. We've always felt like this is, a part of them, but it's definitely not all of them, for sure. And I agree that I think you see that more right now. It feels like it's all of them because we're so focused on language at the beginning. Um, but I agree. And what it sounds like is as they get older, you realize they're a whole person. Of course they are. Like,
Yeah.
there's so much more to people in general. It's not just whether they can hear, or whether they have a disability, or whatever. There's people are complex.
Yes,
You
very.
know.
I
Um,
I would say
yeah,
too, for people to who have littles, remember they are whole people who aren't just about being deaf or hard of hearing. What are their other interests? Get them involved in things that all typical kids are involved in. Try new things for to see what their interests are. And as much as all you have all the appointments and you're carrying all the stress and worry about this, that, and the other for the kid, this is not, they don't see it, they're more complex than just thinking this is all they are. Like, the
yeah.
kids don't think that way. They're not binary.
Hmm.
They don't think that way. um so the earlier you can just start to see them, and your job as a parent is more than just this, that though. My parents know that,
Yeah,
but just focus on the other things too, because it'll make parenting so much more joyful. You know,
yeah,
because schlepping to appointments, this, that, and the others, that's, it's not the most fun thing to do.
yeah. And then trying to like do the practice at home, but like they don't want to practice with you, is like a whole other. They'll do stuff for other people that they won't do for mom.
Yeah, I
A
think
lot of the
with
times.
the auditory verbal therapy that we did, I mean, I know that's evolved too, but it just became a parenting style.
Hmm.
In fact,
Yes,
it's
I agree.
still a weird thing that we do in our house. It's weird. We're weird. I mean, we narrate life. It's
Yeah.
um
No, but I mean, we do too. I think my 2-year-old, I think speaks on like a 3-year-old level.
oh,
She definitely, and I think it's because I talk to her in the same way that I talk to my boys, because that's just how I know how to talk to kids.
yes. Oh, she's going to be so advanced,
Yeah.
because I don't think I would have narrated life had my baby not been born deaf and hard of hearing.
Hmm.
I don't think I would have been through walking through the grocery store saying, "Oh, it's corn. Corn is yellow. The sun," and then having this
She's
communication
trying to get
back and
corn
forth,
in like 5 times. Yeah.
and then him babbling back and going, "Yes, you see the corn," and
Yeah.
like, what? No, we would. I don't think I would have done that, but it. And then
Yes.
there was another stage that we realized you can over narrate life as well. Kids need time to just sit and play and be quiet. You don't
Yeah,
need to
that's a
be
good point.
narrating their play, sitting with them. I was on the floor for, gosh, the first like 8 years, like on the floor playing. We played a lot of games. We did a lot like
Mhm.
Play-Doh. I mean, we were like
Yeah.
just, it was like Camp Gideons. And and then I realized, oh, we're creating monsters.
Oh
They
no.
they're allowed to sit and just play independently and be quiet. They don't need so I had to kind of relook at that at a certain point. I don't remember when it was. I was like, "Oh, right. They don't need their whole life narrated 24/7 either." So I was learning too. Um,
Hmm.
yeah, and I messed up, I'm sure, plenty of times. And then we got into being very physical sports and doing, you know, cul-de-sac we lived on called it Camp Gideons, because we were always out there playing some new sport, and I was like the camp counselor on the street. And um,
That's so fun though.
yeah, it was a whole different, language dynamic. And then the other thing I
Hmm.
was gonna follow up on too, when you said how kids are so different and your kids are so different, and something I was remembering, when my kids were in a deaf and hard of hearing preschool program, and at one point, because they're so close in age, they were there together. And my daughter became fluent in sign language, and my son, not a word. I mean, not a sign. Had no interest. Not
Hmm.
She just picked it up so quickly.
That
And
sounds like mine. Yeah.
same kids, same syndrome, both devices, same family, like home experience, same teacher, same classroom, and one's coming home and learned sign language, and one would not know if you were signing right in front of his face. He would. So very
Hmm.
different learners, very different experience, which is
Yeah.
which makes sense. They're not the same. All people are not the same just because you have a hearing loss.
Mhm.
But
Or
remember
because
that
you're
too.
siblings.
Yeah,
Yeah.
remember that too. And if you have siblings or
Mhm.
you're comparing to another kid in the preschool or in the classroom or wherever, that people learn differently and people are just, they're different.
Yeah. Yeah, and I love that, and I wanted to follow up, because I know you guys are into sports, which I love, and I know you do, and I hear all the time people, like, always wondering about sports, mostly how to keep the cochlears on their heads, but what I'm interested in is, did you so we've just, started getting into the extracurricular activities. We don't do too much yet. So far we've done swim lessons, but they've been private lessons because I found that the group lessons, just aren't great for hearing, for my kids. And so we've done private lessons. Those have worked a lot better because they could be a lot closer, and use sign language and stuff. I have tried one of my kids or two of my kids in just like really just like soccer, and I did not have a good experience. I'm having a really hard time with um coaches or other people outside of school just not understanding that like my kids can't hear as well, and understanding hearing loss. It's like it's easier in school. I mean, I know IEPs are a whole thing and such, but schools, teachers are at least kind of set up for like understanding learning. And I mean, we just like last week tried to do, soccer, and I'm, like obviously right there with my kids. They're not at the age that I leave them yet. And all the kids are like lined up for soccer. And first of all, my kid, they're like further away. So I'm like, oh, great. I should have brought the microphone for the coach to wear because they're further away. So I know that at least my 5-year-old can't hear very well. So I'm trying to like sign to him down the field. My kids don't really like understand what to do or don't really understand what's going on. They're just trying to follow the other kids and they're doing their best. And I'm sitting here on the sideline trying to help them. And then they like lose their balls. And I had to go, like the coach just didn't help them, like was oblivious to the fact that like neither of them had a soccer ball and they were like the only kids. And one time I went up to the coach and was like, hey, can my 5-year-old have the soccer ball that you're using? Because he had a little soccer ball and there were no more little ones. Like they didn't have enough balls for everybody. And I gave the coach the bigger ball. It was like, hey, do you mind if we switch? Because he doesn't have a ball. He needs a little one. This big one is too big for him. He's little. And then the second time, my 7-year-old like lost his ball somewhere and was just like sitting like by the fence on the grass, like picking grass because he couldn't play. And so I, had to pick up my 2-year-old. And by that point, my 5-year-old had quit playing, which is fine. And so I was like grabbing him so he didn't like run out of the field and like trudging everybody like across the field in the middle of practice with all of the parents to go get a ball for my 7-year-old. And I said, here, honey, here's your ball, go play. But it's just like, so far, we have not had a good experience with coaches. And I went early. I tried to explain to the coach about the hearing loss that they couldn't hear. And it just like, he definitely didn't even pay attention to my kids. And I'm also the only parent always that is having to do extra stuff at this events with my kids, and I will even admit that like a lot of times, especially in that moment, because I was stressed out, I get really resentful. I don't hold on to it of other parents who just get to sit and watch their kids play soccer and their kids understand and they're, doing the ball, they can, follow directions and the parents just get to sit there and talk, and they don't have to explain anything different or, understand. And I'm the one running up and down the field the entire practice, going in and out of the field, having to get the balls. And I even saw my 7-year-old and 5-year-old both go up to the coach at one point and try to explain to him that they didn't have a ball. But their language is behind and he kind of acknowledged them, but like not really. And once again, for that age, they should have two coaches. I think they only had one, and they needed two, but we just had a really bad experience. um, so how did you navigate this? And maybe you had better experiences than I did, because obviously your son is getting football scholarships and you did great. But so far we've had a rough time starting extracurricular activities has not been successful.
Yeah. I'm sorry that was your experience.
Sorry.
Over the years, the kids started in organized sports probably when they were kindergarten.
Mhm.
Um, maybe even before, like at the YMCA, some just, recreational type. We've had experiences that were probably great, amazing, and we've had some that were probably in the category that you're describing. So here's what I will tell parents: do not give up. Try again. Different coach, different sport, different season, different kid. Your kid will be different. Just to keep exposing them to different activities, because you're gonna, you know, one, your coach is not set up for success by not having an assistant. My best friend has a child similar to your child's age, and he does not have hearing loss, and she's had to grab him when he's running off the field and running the different direction and picking daisies, and the coach is, it's hurting cats at that age.
Yeah.
Here's what I will tell you that we ended up doing because of these experiences, because I want, both my husband and I are competitive athletes, and it was something we were really hoping that our kids would gravitate towards some sport, no matter what it was, something. And so we wanted these experiences to be positive, because that's when they're going to want to try something else.
Mhm.
We created a coach's guide. It's on my website. It's what I want my coach
Fantastic.
to know about hearing loss. It's My kids helped me create it. There's a place to personalize it. So what we would do, we came up with a formula. We would reach out to the coach before the season, ask to schedule a meeting, so we're not catching them at practice or because it's too chaotic. Uh,
Mhm.
and they needed to be sitting across, like, it needed to be sitting at a picnic bench, just the three of us, rather than catching them when it's kind of transitional where they could just focus. And we would email them the guide ahead of time so they could read it, and it explained what the nuances of hearing loss were with either a cochlear implant or hearing aid, and then strategies they could help implement to help our kid. It's because people don't know what they don't know, and if you're just trying to kind of explain it to them in the, coaching is, so I know, because my husband coached youth sports and now he's a high school football, he helps on the high school football level.
Oh,
Coaching
nice.
is so hard. They're
Mhm.
trying to juggle so much. And even though a lot of those kids on that team may look like just typical kids, they're probably dealing with some other kids that also have maybe learning challenges or some other thing too. So it's all about setting the coach up for success, because on my experience, I think hands down, we've never had a coach that didn't want to help.
Okay.
I mean, I can't think of one that wasn't open to wanting to help. They just may not be equipped, but not having an assistant, I wonder if there's a parent volunteer that could help, you
Yeah.
know, or to
Yeah, I
help
think
herd the
that was
cat.
a big problem. Yeah.
It's My husband coached that age. He's like, it was herding cats. It literally is.
Yeah.
So I highly recommend. We still, so my son's a senior in high school, so he's played on this football team this is his fourth year. We still send out the coach's guide to
Okay.
all the coaches, and they've come up with strategies. They are figuring it out, but like you say, like you wish, like how lucky those parents are that they can just sit and chit chat and sit and watch. Even sitting up in the high school stands, watching my son, who's the captain on the team, most tackles on the team. I see his magnet. I can tell when it's come off underneath his helmet, and I see him, working to get it back on. And
Mhm.
I sit there and I think he's experiencing more stress on that field than probably any kid, and nobody even knows it.
Yeah.
Like the level of stress that must be in between
Mhm.
plays, in between tackles, like, so I just, so you know, I still feel like that way watching him play. Like,
Okay.
Wish I could just, well, football's a very difficult game to watch as a mother. Anyways, it's not
I
made.
couldn't imagine.
No,
Yeah.
it's
I
terrible.
I don't know how you've done it for this
I
long. I
don't.
couldn't imagine.
I don't. I say to the people around me, I hate football. I hate the sport.
Yeah.
I cannot handle this. Like I cannot handle it. And I love watching him play. And he's so amazing. And he's
Yeah.
adapted.
Mhm.
He wasn't always the captain of a team. And there were times he wanted to quit in all sports that he's played. There were times my kids, we had to talk him off the ledge on,
Mhm.
and my daughter would be very mad if I didn't also mention she's a competitive basketball player, got CIF
Yes.
player of the year as a sophomore. That's
Fantastic.
California State for her division. She won the player of the year. I mean, she's amazing, a little spitfire. Um, so she would be mad if she's like, all you did was talk about battle, but
Your brother. Yeah.
she's adapted to, she's, I think it translates to why she picked up sign language so easily. She's very visual and she's
Okay.
more aware of nuances around her. And so
Mhm.
she has not struggled with communication in sports nearly the way he did early on. Um,
Interesting.
yeah, it's his anxiety was way higher than hers, but she's more of a natural athlete too, so things came easier. So again, two kids,
Mhm.
same, and
Yeah.
just experienced sports very differently, but outcomes are still, I would say, it's been a success and worth whether you're going to go on to play college or not. Just participating in sport, and maybe it's not
Mhm.
sports, maybe it's drama or the chess club or gaming. My nephew does Rubik's Cube champion tournaments. I mean, whatever it is, I think it's just you got to try all the things, and it's going to be painful sometimes when your kid's struggling. It it's going
Yeah.
to be, yeah. It's But you just have to keep. And this doesn't. I'm not a proponent of the overscheduling, and that's why I
Right.
said we played a lot of sports just out in the front yard. We threw the
Mhm.
ball, like mom and dad can play catch with the kid. They don't have to sign up for Little League. We can kick a ball. They don't have to play soccer. Like I taught him to swim, taught him to surf, taught him, it doesn't have to be organized, but you also want to expose them to as much as you can because that's how they're going to find their people.
Yeah. No, I love that. Thank you so much. We'll definitely link to the coaches, what to tell your coach in the show notes, and I'm going to use it. So
Sure.
that we can figure that out better for our kids. But yeah, and I love what you're saying that, they can find what they're good at and it doesn't have to be organized either. That you can teach them as the parents, we're capable of helping and teaching our kids. It doesn't always have to be everyone else. You guys are looking towards college. How do you
Yes.
feel about that? What are you looking for? I know our time is running low and I want to respect your time, but I know parents will ask because I feel like a lot of parents get a lot of support when their kids are young. And then as their kids get to be teenagers, the support kind of goes away, but you still need support. I think a lot of, people and a lot of the support out there is like, okay, by the time you're teenagers, you like know what you're doing or something. Um, so what are you guys, I know parents will ask, what are you guys looking for when you're looking towards college for your son?
We were actually just at a senior college night at our school last night. We're very lucky we go to a school that has a college counseling team. I mean, it's been so painless.
Oh,
They
great.
help walk through, the kids are all on timelines walking through the application process. But I think I can't speak to the general population because having an athlete that's being recruited is a
Mhm.
very different experience. I he's I can't say he's lucky because he's worked super hard academically and athletically to get these opportunities, but
Of course.
changes he has a lot of choice, which is, again, I could start crying. Like he's
Mhm.
his hardest thing is going to be choosing. because there's, some very desirable places that that want him. So you want to be wanted. We will then, when we're drilling down on making the final decision, it's down to 5. We will be talking extensively with what services they offer and how they view disabilities at their college. So that will probably push it over the edge. But I will write about it and share about it when we get to that next step.
Please do.
We're not there yet. So I know, there's a whole different process for people who are going through the traditional application. It's all about timelines. And my kids both chose, are deciding that a smaller college is more appealing to them, not going to like a Big Ten or D1 right now. So smaller class sizes, more personal. And that's been their high school experience as well. But that doesn't mean they couldn't go on to a giant school if they wanted, but that would probably, come with different challenges, and we'd be probably dealing with something different. So I don't know yet.
Mhm.
I don't know what
Well,
that
let us
is.
know.
And I will say,
That's okay.
I'm so excited for him. I'm just in the excitement. I'm not in the, oh, I can't believe he's going to be like, I'm not feeling sad or I'm so excited for him. He's ready. He is ready
Yeah.
to launch. Like, I feel like he's going to be not completely. So there'll be a whole other set of things how we're going to transition to him managing his devices. And this year is a big year for that.
Hmm.
And more responsible for more of the stuff that I've kind of just taken on.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like I need to have you back for round 2 about like advocacy
Yeah. Yeah.
for kids and helping them do that, because that's a whole other like episode.
Yeah.
So I
There's
think
so
there's
many
going to be a round
episodes.
2 in the mix here. Yeah,
We have a lot of episodes within this episodes. I mean, it's just, there's a
for
lot. And
sure.
in 18 years, there's a lot.
Yeah. Yes. It's a whole lifetime.
Yes.
So absolutely. Yeah. No, we'll be excited to hear about everything that you're encountering as you send someone off to college. And the real question is, how are you going to handle watching him play college ball?
Right. I got assigned by my editor a group I write for, to write about
Mhm.
the Friday Night Lights experience
Yeah.
senior. But I said, my experience is a little different because he's not going to be putting his cleats away.
Right.
Like, that feeling would be, I think, very different. Like, if my daughter wasn't going to play college and basketball in college and she's putting her basketball away, I
Yeah.
would have a lot of feelings about that, but she wants to play in college right now too. So it's like,
Fantastic.
this
Yeah.
is not ending, possibly.
Yeah.
So it's just more exciting. It's just exciting. But I think when you feel like your kids are prepared and ready to launch, just focus on how exciting this time is versus how sad. It's
Yeah.
not an empty nest, it's an evolved nest, is what they say.
Oh, I love looking at it that way. Says
Yeah.
the one who's still only going to have kids at home forever.
Right. Oh, you think it's
Um,
forever. I mean, you think it's
I
forever.
know.
It's insane how fast it goes. It really, I mean, it's so cliche, but it's real.
I know. Yeah. Well, I appreciate you coming and talking to us and talking to the parents. You said so much helpful stuff today and so much encouragement for parents. I really appreciate it. If there is one thing, or it could be 2 things, that you can leave parents with, any tip, encouragement, what do you think that would be?
Oh, goodness gracious. Well, I want every new
That's hard.
parent to buy my book, Through the
Mhm.
Fog, because everything we've just talked about, I write about. I see in all the chat groups questions and concerns people have. I'm like, oh, I wrote about that. Oh, I wish I could give them my book. I really, I'm not trying, it's not about just trying to sell books, which, is nice when you're a self-published author, but I just want parents to know it's going to be okay. It is. It's going to be hard for sure. It's both amazing and hard. I think that's just parenting in general. I mean, it is a lot of responsibility raising humans. And we all think we're messing it up. We all think I think I'm messing it up every day. So you just try to do the best you can. And that's what that's a message I would like to leave people with. And then I would love people to join my online communities, my battle call on Instagram and on Facebook, because it really is a supportive community. And I think we all need community. And I don't presume to know it all, or I certainly don't tell you what to do or that you should do it this way at all. But we're just definitely stronger, I think, together and in community. We need it. So, yeah, and I'm happy for anyone to ever reach out in my messages, just like you did about the show, and
Yes.
congratulations on the show. I think it's really important for us to be sharing our stories. And there's no one way, there's lots of beautiful ways, and just yeah, connect.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. And that is definitely what we're trying to show on this podcast is lots of different stories, and there's lots of different ways to raise kids.
Period.
And to raise deaf kids. Yeah, period. Yeah, pretty much. Thank you so much. We'll definitely link to your book and the coaches and everything that we can of you in the show notes, absolutely, for people to get to. And we thank you so much for being on and taking your time to do this today. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Take care.
You too.